Welcome to another show, another week of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Thanks for tuning in. And also thanks to you, the viewers, for making us number one. KFXA, Fox 28, very happy Sinclair Broadcast Group, as am I. They've let me know to let you know. Thank you very much for your viewership and making us number one. That being said, got another great show lined up for you again this week with Joe Mershman joining me here in just a moment, CEO of Mershman Seeds, and going to do our Mershman Minute about Super Sunday, with the Hawkeyes being involved in that game big time, 2 for the Chiefs, 2 for the Buccaneers. And also David Eichel, Hawkeye Insider, will join me in a little bit, talking Iowa Hawkeye men's basketball. And our usual lineup with James Vandenberg, the former Hawkeye quarterback, joining me, and then we'll close out the show with former Hawkeye basketball playing great Jeff Horner. So that is your show, and I've located Joe Mershman. So first and foremost, as always, Joe, thanks for joining me. And secondly, how's everything going with you? Who do you like on Super Sunday? Buccaneers, Chiefs? We got 2 Chiefs from the University of Iowa, former players. 2 Buccaneers, 2 former players. So you're the tiebreaker. What are we doing?
Dave, my Missouri customers would skin me alive if I didn't go with the Chiefs. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
All right. I covered the Chiefs for 15 years when I worked at Fox Sports Radio, hosted a daily show there, Fox Sports Radio, Kansas City. And I enjoyed that team. I enjoyed the new organization. I didn't get to work much with them, but I know a lot of people down there still, and I'm pulling for them. But I'm not trying to be adversarial here with you, but I am going to go with the Buccaneers in a close one. So I've been vacillating all week about this. I know we record this on Tuesday, 5 days ahead of time, but I'm going with the Buccaneers. You're going with the Chiefs. Can't wait to talk to you about it next week, my friend.
Okay, sounds good.
And I've located David Eichel. Shot out of a cannon today. He and I both are and will be, continue to be. I'm going to get out of the way and just say first and foremost, as always, David, thanks for joining me. You see all of David's contact info at the bottom of the screen along with mine. David, I got to say, got a lot of things happening with Iowa basketball. We record this on Tuesday afternoon. You got a big game against Michigan State tonight. Got a big game on Thursday against Ohio State. By the time this show airs on Friday night, the Hawks will have played 2 games, and then, of course, on Super Sunday, the Hawks tip off at 11 o'clock for the rematch against Indiana. I'm stepping out of the way. Thanks for joining me. Go.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, Dave, that, this is a big gut check week for Iowa. Even though their season ended after the loss against Illinois, Iowa still remains in the top 10 in the AP poll. But I think this is the most important stretch of the season. All of Iowa's goals are still in front of them. Michigan State, they aren't as good as Michigan State's past teams, but they have, they got Joey Hauser, they have Joshua Langford, they have Rocket Watts. That team still has a lot of talent. They're going to be no easy out. And remember, the Spartans have won 19 of the last 22 games against Iowa. And it's the only Big Ten team that Luka Garza has not beaten. So, he's going to go into that extremely motivated as well. And Ohio State, a little bit of a surprise from them this season, especially considering their top 2 point guards have been hurt for the past several weeks, but they're up to number 7 in the AP poll. They got a lot of talent. EJ Liddell is one of my favorite players in the nation. You could kind of see that breakthrough coming last year. He really hurt Iowa last year with his mid-range game, but he's an exceptional player and a little bit of an undersized 4 guy, but it'll be very interesting to kind of watch him and Luka Garza go head-to-head. And then Super Bowl Sunday, you better get those Super Bowl platters ready early because that game's tipping off at 11 o'clock. Obviously, Iowa's going to be incredibly motivated in that, because Indiana obviously beating Iowa 81-69 in the first matchup. But this is a huge gut check week for Iowa. I still think they can regain a lot of national attention, regain a lot of the fandom, and as far as being a trendy Final Four pick, if they can go 3-0 this week, Dave, I think that'd just be an absolute massive help to their bracket.
Oh, couldn't agree more with you. And David, the intriguing thing is, after losing that tough game against Illinois, you see they only dropped 1 spot. They went from 7 to 8 in the AP, and as you mentioned, Ohio State at number 7 right now. The Hawks and Joe Lunardi at ESPN still has the Hawks as a top 8 team. I mean, in his bracketology. So as a second tier or lower level 2 seed. So the Hawks are getting much respect nationwide, as is the Big Ten, with 3 teams in the top 10, with Michigan, Ohio State, and Iowa all in the top 8, actually.
Yeah, and I think people recognize the importance of C.J. Frederick's injury. I mean, he's missed the last 3 halves of this of game time by the time of this recording. I mean, look, it is never going to be eye-popping stats, but he shoots 50% from 3, and the way he spaces the floor and gives Iowa some stability on the perimeter defense, because that's what really hurt against Iowa, and Ayo Dosunmu continued to get in the lane, breaking down the man coverage. That's why Iowa had to switch into zone coverage. But CJ is one of their biggest gamers, and he can hit clutch shots when he's on the floor. Look, Iowa's just better on both ends of the floor.
In about 1 minute left here, David, I wanted to ask you, you had press availability with Fran. Again, we record this on Tuesday afternoon before the Michigan State game. Of course, it airs Friday night. You had press availability with Fran and the team yesterday. A couple of takeaways. Give us the CJ Frederick update as you just kind of did, but reiterate, please. And then a great practice they talked about on Sunday. Hit that for us, please.
Yeah, first of all, CJ Frederick, again, at the time of this recording Tuesday night, has missed the last 3 halves, but he did do some things during Sunday and Monday's practice. Fran McCaffrey seemed to be pretty optimistic about it. As far as his availability for tonight's game against Michigan State, I'm not 100% sure, but I would be surprised if he did not return at all this week. So maybe circle that Ohio State game, but maybe they run him restricted tonight against Michigan State. And obviously, like you said, Iowa had an incredibly intense practice. So I'm anticipating they're going to come out with a lot of energy against the Spartans.
Can't wait. David, thank you so much. Catch up with you next week, my friend.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Back with more Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, with James Vandenberg and Jeff Horner in just a few moments.
One word means more to farmers than any other: yield. Nobody knows this better than your friend in the field, Mershman Seeds. With industry-leading seed treatments like Trepidity ST, you'll see faster emergence and more bushels per acre. Become a part of the Mershman family and see the difference in your field. Ask your dealer for superiority. Mershman Seeds.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. And as you can see on the screen, I got my buddy James Vandenberg, former Iowa Hawkeye quarterback, joining us as usual. And James, as I mentioned, former Hawkeye quarterback and also a free agent with the Minnesota Vikings, went to camp there and a couple other camps in the NFL. So he's got very good NFL experience as well as many of his former teammates. So James right now has been with RBC Wealth Management and CorridorInvestmentGroup.com, as you can see on the bottom of the screen. James with the former Hawkeye receiver Billy Happel run a great business in Cedar Rapids, financial planning, so they take care of all your financial needs. But James, first and foremost, as always, thanks for joining us. And secondly, here we go, my friend, Super Sunday. I can't say the SB word, apparently, but it's Super Sunday. And as you smile in there, you know where I'm going with this. Your former teammate, Anthony Hitchens with the Chiefs as a linebacker, but also your familiarity with Ben Neiman, former Hawkeye, after your time at Iowa. And then also Tristan Wirfs, whom you're familiar with after your time at Iowa. And of course, Anthony Nelson after your time at Iowa, but with the Buccaneers. So we've got 2-2. So that's our tiebreaker for the Super Bowl. But first and foremost, as always, James, thanks for joining us. And secondly, how's everything going with you, my friend?
Hey, thanks for having me, Dave. We're all good here. I'm not really sure why you can't say Super Bowl. Hopefully I can. Maybe I can. I don't know.
No, I can.
I just have to say SB, but...
That's why I say as Super Sunday. I guess you're not even supposed to say that, but we just did, so you're all right. But
Voldemort? Like, I'm confused.
he who shall remain nameless. That's right, a little Harry Potter reference. But no, it's interesting because a lot of people will say that to you and say, hey, you can't really be mentioning those words. But at any rate, for the purposes of this show, we got a big game on Sunday, and it's Chiefs, Buccaneers, and you have playing experience, as you mentioned in the past, not only when we had the NFC and the AFC championship games with all 4 teams, and there were a wealth of Hawkeyes, 9 to be exact on all 4 of those teams with the Packers, Bills, Chiefs, and Bucks. But the intriguing thing, James, they led the NFL, the Hawkeyes did, with former Hawks ahead of LSU. Hawks had 9, LSU had 7. Now at the Super Sunday game, we've got 2 former Hawkeyes for the Chiefs and 2 for the Buccaneers. Second most in the NFL behind LSU with 6. But you have playing experience, and we talked about Christian Kirksey with the Packers when you were playing there, but also one of his fellow teammates and yours as well, but on the linebacking core, Anthony Hitchens for the Chiefs. And he had a position change at Iowa when you were there. And I want you to talk about your experience with Anthony first and foremost, please.
Yeah, Hitch is, first off, a great guy, really good teammate. I can't remember if he came in as a DB or a running back, but he played both of those before he ended up at linebacker. And I vividly do remember handing him the ball in camp several times. And then I remember he was at safety, and then he ended up finding a home at linebacker at will. And just a really physical linebacker. I mean, in the box, in your face mask to face mask type player. Really good at stopping, the run. Really good at stopping the run.
And the great news is, James, as always, that red shirt and practice shirt, do not hit the quarterback shirt. It was your best friend during Hitch's days, right?
That was definitely the case. I was protected.
That is good news. But you said you remember handing him the ball, but because he went from running back, you mentioned DB, to running back to linebacker, found his home there. But that is really the story at Iowa, where a lot of these 2- and 3-star recruits come in, they get into the Iowa system, man, they just jettison into the stratosphere of talent when they find their home. Right now today with Tyler Linderbaum, goes from defensive lineman to offensive center and one of the best centers in college football. That to me, and I could name after name, as could you, but we don't have that much time on this show, but that to me always fascinates me about the Iowa program, James, is how once a player finds a home, it is Katie bar the doors and they're off and running.
Well, and yeah, we joke a lot of times. If you're recruited as a D lineman, you're probably going to end up on the O line. If you're recruited as a linebacker, you're probably going to end up on the D line. And if you were a big enough DB, you might play linebacker. I mean, there's definitely something to that. They're looking for core nickel or linebacker. They'll figure that out. If the guy's got the core traits they like and they think he has kind of what it takes mentally and on the work ethic side, they'll find a position. And Hitch was a great example of that, why I was there. I mean, just didn't quite fit at safety, didn't quite fit at running back. He's a great teammate. He works hard. And Will was a spot that he just flourished in Iowa.
Yeah, and that is so fun to watch when a guy starts to develop like that. Now we'll go on to the other side of the football because, again, Ben Neiman, but we know about his dad coaching at Iowa, his brother playing at Iowa. I mean, that Neiman heritage at Iowa is something else. So we got 2 Chiefs we've discussed. Now, and again, Anthony Nelson was after your time, as was Tristan Wirfs for the Buccaneers. Wirfs, what a rookie season he had, protecting Tom Brady. And unfortunately for Tristan, the only time he gets mentioned is if Brady gets sacked or he gets a holding penalty. But he's getting mentioned a lot more as the season went on. People saw, man, this rookie is playing like a veteran. And James, I got to tell you, when you're in the postseason, and everybody says this in all the major sports, once you get to the postseason, these guys are no longer rookies. It's like with March Madness in basketball. These guys are no longer freshmen once they get to the postseason. But in Tristan's case, you had lunch with him right before he was going into the draft or before his last year at Iowa. And again, Anthony Nelson having a very successful career in year 2 with the Buccaneers as a stand-up linebacker or stand-up defensive end, kind of that position hybrid you talked about at Iowa. But we'll talk about Tristan right now. And what did you glean from the lunch? As you said to me off the air, he's a very large man, David. But besides that, what else did you glean from that lunch you had with Tristan?
Well, I think my biggest takeaway was just how respectful he was, quite frankly. I mean, he was just a stand-up guy, very respectful. Please, thank you. I mean, easy to carry a conversation with. And yeah, he's also giant. I remember Matt Kroll used to roll around with him when he was at Mount Vernon, and Matt was out of the NFL and helping wrestling. And I just remember Matt telling me that, like, whenever Tristan would like snap and get it all together, he's like, he could just throw me totally across the room. And guy known for being tough. And Matt basically said he was a little dull compared to when Tristan would turn it on. That was back in high school, obviously. And then you develop him for 3-4 years at Iowa. And it's just like, yeah, he's a physical specimen that has all the tools to play as long as he wants. And I was definitely not taken back, but I mean, just refreshed on how good of a guy he was. You could just tell he's a good guy, down to earth, not full of himself. And then he has the physical talent to go with it.
You know, the way, and you mentioned, man, if you're ragdolling Matt Kroll, as you mentioned, that's an achievement in and of itself. And you're, yeah, and you're still in high school doing that like Wirfs was. But, you know, much has been made at the time, his off-field misstep in Wirfs' case. But the fact that he developed from that, and I heard, you know, his story after that, I don't know if a lot of people know this, when he was suspended for that game at Iowa, and he would live next to an elderly man, and he watched the game at the elderly man's house and realized how much he missed the game and reached out to the community. You know, that's before he had to clean up Kinnick Stadium before the game, then he had to leave, then his team plays, and then he had to clean up the stadium after the fact. And what he did after that tells me when a guy makes a mistake, and you know, I don't want to be held accountable for what happened in my life before the age of 21, so look at what all these guys are doing, and you're in the spotlight. So good on him. One, bad move for making the mistake off the field and paying for it. But when he paid for it, James, the amazing thing to me is he came out on the other side and seemed like a much better kid.
Yeah. Well, yeah, once again, I think that goes back to kind of the types of people they're looking for at Iowa. And you hope that they're going to respond that way. You can't stop people from making mistakes. everybody's done it. You're in a limelight, you're in a small town. I mean, it doesn't give you an excuse, but it's going to happen. You have 120 18-year-olds. I mean, it's just something will go wrong, and you hope that they're going to react exactly how Tristan did. And I think that's defined him as a person. And clearly it also defined kind of the trajectory of his play at Iowa, and now his play in the NFL, being a rookie in Super Bowl.
Well stated by you as always, my friend. Do you want to make a prediction, or are you just going to enjoy two former
Hawkeyes? You get to pick this one. Tell me where to put my money in the SB.
I am going to go my heart and my head. I've been vacillating back and forth. As we get closer to game time, since you're putting my feet to the fire, I'm going to go the Bucs in a close one. That's what I'm going to go with that.
I'll take the Chiefs. I'll take the Chiefs.
We'll talk about it next week. Also upcoming, viewers, I want to let you know, James and I have been talking. We're going to rotate some former Hawkeyes in as well, and I've reached out to Ike Betker with the Bills, and he's going to join us at some point. Josie Jewell's going to join us at some point from the Decorah area, former Hawkeye great, now with the Broncos, and also Parker Hesse from Waukon, Northeast Iowa, more my home area up around Postville and Castelia, Northeast Iowa area, and I'm going to go ahead and try to get those guys on as James and I are talking throughout the year as well. And Parker, as you know, in the NFL on practice squads, another position switch from defensive end to tight end. So looking forward to catching up with those guys and you as the show progresses here, James. So thanks so much, and look forward to catching up with you next week, James.
Thanks, Dave. Enjoy the SB.
You do the same. Super Sunday. All right, James. For James Vandenberg, the former Hawkeye quarterback, again, CordoInvestmentGroup.com, RBC Wealth Management. This is Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Back with more to close out the show with Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye basketball playing great, in just a few moments.
There is a spot for women in agriculture. There's many places for females, for female farmers. We can do a lot. Over the years, maybe we couldn't have always done everything, but there's lots of places we're finding on our dairy farm especially that females are really good at milking cows. They're really good caretakers. They're good at taking care of animals and observant and detail-oriented, which fits in well on a farm and can make an operation more successful.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. And as you can see, my buddy Jeff Horner on the screen next to me. Jeff has been a couple weeks since he's been here, but we got him back in action. Jeff, I got to tell you, your buddies Adam Haluska and Greg Bruner did a great job filling in for you, so you got a lot to live up to. But first and foremost, as always, my friend, Iowa Hawkeye all-time leader in assists for the men's basketball program, and at or near most meaningful statistical offensive categories in Iowa basketball history. Now in year 3 as head coach at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri, their head coach, number 8 team in the country, ranked number 8. In the polls, national polls for Division II. Jeff, first and foremost, as always, thanks for joining us. But secondly, you've been on quarantine for the last couple of weeks, or you had a player test positive. So you don't play 2 games, and you move from number 10 in the country to number 8. You played 5 games, won them in a row. You barely budged up from 13 to number 12. As you're smiling here, would you dare try to explain to me rankings or any type of thing during the season? It doesn't matter what level of college basketball. It seems like the rankings are it's like watching a Russian judge in gymnastics. It's very arbitrary, isn't it?
Yeah, it just is what it is. I don't really understand it, but in the same sense, we moved, like you said, we moved up 2 spots. From 10 to number 8, and when it's all said and done, those don't mean anything anyways. It's good publicity for the program and for the school, and so it's one of those things where we'll take what we can get out of that, but the only thing that we can do is just try to worry about ourselves.
Right, but yeah, as you've mentioned in the past, it does have to do with postseason seeding, and you and I have talked about this months ago when this show started 14 weeks ago. It amazes me to this day how dead on the money you were, and it's playing out this way. It's almost like Major League Baseball towards the end of the season last year, or NBA bubble, or the NFL didn't have issues. They were able to get games in, or they had some issues in scheduling. But eventually, Jeff, you guys are going to run out of days to get games in. And University of Iowa men's team is going through that right now with the postponement of the Michigan State game earlier this year. Well, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, Iowa's at home tonight against Michigan State for game 1, and then they're going to play the Spartans, in East Lansing in about 10 days. But then they also have a game Thursday. So by the time this show airs, the Hawks will have already played the 2 games, and the viewers will know the results. And by the way, boom, right back for a rematch when they lost at Carver Hawkeye a couple of weeks ago to Indiana. They're going to be in Bloomington. Then a lot of games right there shortly thereafter. And your prediction of, Dave, it may not be the best team at the end of the year, but the healthiest team or last man standing. And you guys are going to be going through it with your team at Truman State, now the Hawkeyes. Talk to me a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Yeah, even when we come back on Thursday, we're still not going to have everybody back. So that's something to always keep an eye on, those types of things. And kind of like what you said, I think that if you have a deep team, I think that's huge. We will have all 5 of our starters back on Thursday and Saturday, and hopefully the rest of the way out. But in the same sense, if you're missing a couple of guys here and there, and you haven't played a game or you haven't practiced in 12 days, it's definitely important to have a lot of guys who can play and who can go out there and give energy. So that's something that's very important. And obviously Iowa's going to go through it here pretty soon. We're going to be at like 3 games a week if people ever try to reschedule our games. But in the same sense, I think it's important for these kids to be able to get to play games, because for us at the Division II level, they're already missing 8 games for a whole regular season. And so, I just feel bad for the kids if people don't reschedule games or try to reschedule games, those types of things. And so hopefully we can get those things figured out. And I know the guys would rather be playing games than probably practicing and hearing me yelling at them, that type of thing. So, like you said, survival of the fittest here towards the end.
Yeah, it really is. And that's the intriguing thing, like you said, what's best for the kids. It's, they've had to do without enough. And then when guys off the court, administrators, ADs, school administration, the school presidents, these people making decisions, it causes me to scratch my head. But again, hopefully in the grand wisdom of things here and as it plays out, we've got what's best for the kids, as you mentioned, Jeff. And it's interesting to point out that 8 is the magic number. You're 8th in the country in your national rankings, Division II. The Iowa Hawkeyes are number 8. They didn't slip much after losing that tough game at Illinois. And again, we mentioned the juggernaut, the buzzsaw they're going to be facing here in the next week. Today, Tuesday, we record this. It airs on Friday nights on Fox 28 at 10 o'clock. But, they'll have played 2 games by the time this show airs and after we record this today. So that's interesting. But you take a look at, they didn't fall much after that loss to Illinois. And kind of what you and I predicted when we talked off the air last week about this game with Iowa and Illinois. You had DeSumo and Coburn doing what they do. Garza played well as usual, but got into foul trouble with some interesting calls. And Jeff, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to sound like a homer and complain about officiating as you're kind of smirking there, but you've been through this in the Big Ten. I guess what I'm looking for, and a lot of the Hawkeye fans, and even Fran himself, or you as a player and a coach, consistency in officiating, I think is the thing. And Jeff, there's been so many arbitrary calls upcoming here about Luka being able to go up. Can he come down? Can he move? Some of the defense. I just find this to be somewhat puzzling this deep into a Big Ten season.
Yeah, definitely. It sounded like, and I got to watch the game here and there sparingly, I guess you could say. And, obviously Iowa gets into the bonus, I believe, with 10 minutes left in the second half. And then Illinois is not listed for another foul the rest of the game. And, unfortunately, when you're playing on the road in the Big Ten, you can't expect calls, and that's just kind of how it goes. And, whether it goes for you or against you, it's one of those things where you just got to keep playing and keep moving on. And, obviously everyone says, well, COVID, could keep players out, this and that. And then everyone kind of forgets, that the injury bug can happen too, as well with CJ Frederick, so it's one of those things where, just because COVID's around, the flu, everyone thinks the flu has just disappeared, that type of thing. But, that's not the case as well. And well, maybe the case on some, on some doctor's appointments, that type of thing. But, obviously with CJ being hurt, I think that takes away their best perimeter defender, obviously a really good shooter to help Luka out. And, I think that's just an extremely big loss for them for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And, we're hearing good news that he can come back. But if and when he does tonight against Michigan State, that's a game by game. And as you know, Jeff, he could tweak that, have a lower leg injury again just by going through warm-ups tonight. So again, we record this on Tuesday afternoon as the Hawks are getting ready to face Michigan State, and you'll know that result, viewers, by the time you see this show. And the Hawks, you'll also know the result of Thursday night's game against Ohio State too. But Jeff, let's do this. I want to kind of go into what Adam and I and Greg talked about last week, your former teammates Adam Haluska and Greg Bruner, with Jordan Bohannon. Now that he's number 2 on the all-time assist list, and he's closing in on you, Jeff, getting within about 30, 35 in that range, depending how tonight's game turns out with Michigan State. And of course, the next 3 games, he could be circling your number here pretty quick. But I got to ask you this directly. A lot of people have commented with Jordan's off the court. He's doing a podcast and he's tweeting out about parking tickets and his Twitter battle with University of Iowa parking. And Greg and Adam gave their comments about their experience playing at Iowa, and I'm curious on your thoughts and what you went through. I didn't realize, and I even talked to James Vandenberg about this last week, and he does financial planning symposiums with the players. The former quarterback comes back, and Coach Ferentz brings him back to talk to football players, and he said, Dave, there are players when they leave Iowa with thousands and thousands of dollars racked up in parking tickets, and Adam and Greg both talked about their experience with this. I'm just fascinated, besides Bohannon having to worry about playing ball and staying healthy, like you said, the flu or injury and this type of thing, he doesn't worry about records, as you and I have joked about off the air and on the air. But I got to tell you, I just can't believe that you athletes and I'm not trying to give you preferential treatment. I've heard this for years, Jeff, from any student, any people around Iowa City, as you smirk, and I don't want to go off on a rant here, but I'm still flummoxed as to how this is an issue in 2021. When Haluska came from Iowa State, he said he never had problems with parking. It was available and free. Talk to me about that just if you would for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that if you were going to practice that you would be able to park at the place that you're practicing, type of thing. Luckily for me, my girlfriend my wife now lived about a block up the street from Carver. So I just walked over there, so I didn't have to worry about that as much. But I definitely feel his pain, as I'm sure probably any University of Iowa student probably feels his pain. But you would think that, obviously being able to, park at where you practice and having to leave your car out there for long periods of time, that, you would have a parking pass or something along those lines. Yeah. Those same people that say, oh, well, he needs to worry about playing basketball. Those are the same people that say, oh, well, you shouldn't, you're getting a full scholarship and this and that, so it's like, people who want to say that just because you're a basketball player that you don't get to have a life outside of the game of basketball and be a college kid, obviously the spotlight's more on you and you gotta, you gotta act in a certain way, but in the same sense, in the day of social media, it's one of those things where, people are allowed to have their opinions, and we live in America, and, people can have their opinions. You can disagree with it or you can agree with it, but in the same sense, people saying that he needs to focus on basketball and not worry about a podcast or not worry about parking tickets, those types of things. I'm sure though, when they were students, they had those same frustrations if they would have went to the University of Iowa as well.
Yeah, it's well documented. Jeff, great stuff from you as always. I wish you the best of health with your team, yourself, and everything else moving forward. We look forward to catching up with you next week. He's Jeff Horner, head basketball coach at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri, into year 3. By the way, all 5 of his starters, and actually the first 2 guys off the bench are all Iowa kids. So he's in Missouri, but still got that Iowa connection. But number 8 team in the country in Division II men's basketball. So Jeff, congrats on that. But again, Jeff, former Iowa Hawkeye basketball, playing great, still at or near the top of all statistical offensive, meaningful offensive categories in the University of Iowa basketball history. Still number 1 on the assist list as Jordan Bohannon gets closer, but Jeff and I will keep you updated on that as the weeks progress. But Jeff, thanks so much for joining us as always, and looking forward to catching up with you next week here at Hawkeye. Jeff, thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
You bet. Thank you. For Jeff Horner, James Vandenberg, David Eichholt, and Joe Marshman, and most importantly to you, the viewers, thanks for joining us, and thanks for making us number 1 in late night again. Fox 28 and myself here at Dave O'Hara Sports, or Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara, couldn't be happier, and say thank you so much again for your viewership. Also, stay tuned just for a second after the show here as the credits roll, and support my advertisers and sponsors the way they support this show. So once again, thanks to all the aforementioned guests, and most importantly, thanks to you, the viewers. For Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara, that's all from me. Thanks to all of you.